UFC 289 is this weekend, and my partners, DraftKings Sportsbook, are offering new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly. All you have to do is sign up using the promo code Sonnen and bet just $5. That's right, new customers can bet just $5 on any of this weekend's fights and receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. Use the $200 in bonus bets on DraftKings Same Fight Parlay. This is going to give you a shot for an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including number of rounds and method of victory. The more bets you combine, the more money you can win. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy with the chance to win huge cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers, use promo code SONN and bet just $5 on any wager and get 200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code SONN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Is Punk still on TV? Is that still a thing? Ashton Kutcher, and he used to do the show, and it's called Punk. They go up and do some pranks or something like that. He called it Punked instead of Pranked. So, there was one that I remember. I mean, it was all these years ago, and I still remember it. And it was a guy, he was like a valet. He was something at a restaurant. Might have been a waiter, might have been a valet, maitre d' type thing. And then it involved Stone Cold Steve Austin. And they're having a back and forth, but Austin's getting pissed off. Legitimately. And Austin was asked to defend this other guy. They don't know what's on camera. It turns out to be a good piece. I mean, here we are, I don't know, 10 years ago. Might have been more than that, but I remember it. I remember it, right? The only thing I remember about Punked was it was a pretty good show, except Ashton kept coming out and laughing like a seventh grader, and it ruined the whole thing. He had to come out and let him know it was him. It was weird. It was just weird that he did. That was the only thing I remember, aside from the fact of Stone Cold, this gentleman at the restaurant. Partway through it, as Stone Cold's getting mad, the guy at the restaurant, who was an actor, cracks. And he goes, hey, I'm out. I'm done. Hey, you're being punked. I'm out. And he tells the camera, he's like, I'm done, because Austin was legitimately getting pissed off. So you had this great piece, and it worked. It worked, even though one guy was an actor and knew it was staged, microphones and cameras were hidden. It worked. Why? Because the other guy didn't know. Austin didn't know. And you could have done the same thing. You could have the same cameras. You could have had the same scenic. You could have the same visual. Have the same cars in the background. He's wearing the same camouflage jacket. If you would have told him at the table 5 minutes earlier, hey, man, they're going to do a prank on the outside. Roll with it. It would have been different. There'd be nothing he could do. His mannerisms would be different. His attitude would be different. The guy cracking at the end is saying, it all would have been different. It would have been very different. You would have seen that. You, the audience, would have seen that. When you're doing a work, it is paramount that as few people involved in the work know it's a work as possible. You wouldn't need to tell the cameraman. You should have an ability to have him there ready to do something else when this breaks off, even though this was your plan the whole time. You don't need to tell him. You don't need to tell your sound guy. You don't need to tell anybody in the background, right? It's one of those things. And if I'm wrong and there is somebody you got to tell because they got to get a certain location, okay, great, then you tell him, but you don't tell anybody else. Do you know how important that is? The Pride Fighting Championship put on fake fights. Now, all I mean by fake is fixed. They fixed them. You're seeing guys win. It was fixed. You wonder why those guys came over to the States, champion over there and all them else, and they're having a hard time winning a single match. Well, they didn't have experience. They were over there doing works. And it worked. It worked. It looked good. It looked really good on camera. So, matter of fact, nobody has ever spoken up and said those were fixed until I did. And I remember where I was. I was in Vancouver, Canada. Rich Franklin was getting ready to fight Chuck Liddell, and I was doing something called a Q&A. And I revealed this. And once I reveal it, you then had guys, the late, great Kevin Randleman at the time, Mark Coleman. You had these guys that came up and they backed me up. Said, yeah, man, there were all sorts of fixed fights. But the way they did it is they only told one guy, and that's the guy that's going down. Why would you need to tell the winner? Why would you possibly need to tell the winner that, hey, you're going to throw a punch at some point and this guy's going to pretend that? Why? So they didn't. So now you have a guy that goes down where you're not counting on him to act. Anybody could do that. Literally anybody. Here, watch. I'll do it real fast. Are you ready? Like anybody can do that. You're down. You're not moving. You wait a while. The cameras are somebody else. Eventually you get up. You stumble to the back. You don't do an interview because you're a little concussed perhaps. It's one of these things. But the winner, he's got to get on the ropes. He's got to pump up the crowd. He's got to hold that check over his head. And if anybody's going to go back because they smell a rat, they're going to take a look at that and go, boy, that sure is authentic. Look at that celebration. That's as organic as it comes. And that's what they did. It was a very good way to do it. So we come to 3 days ago when Jake Paul and Jorge Masvidal worked out an arrangement where they were going to face off and have certain words with each other and film the whole thing and then put it out. And that's up my alley. I would do that. If Jake called me, I would do something like we'd have some fun with it. What were those two trying to sell? What was the point of that? I mean, it looked bad, but that's okay. If you film it right, and they did, if you have the right guys, and they did, if you have the right platform, which is social media to post it on, it takes up about 15 seconds of somebody's time. It's okay. It was very clear, right? These were not actors or performers. These were two guys that were in agreement that were trying to act as though they were. It was one of those things. Okay, fine. I can live with the whole thing. I'm talking about it now, and I tell you, yeah, they're promoting their fight, and it's 3 Sundays from now at noon over at the Charlotte Center. I mean, but I don't have any of those things. What are those two doing? What was the point of that? Why are we here? Why did you stage that? Why did you stage a fake beef? Why did you do that? And I don't know. If you wanted to do it and you wanted to get something authentic, if you had a little something with Masvidal, you go, hey, he'll understand. I can get to him later. He'll just go and do it. And when you're done, then tell him, hey, by the way, that whole thing's a work. Come look at this. How's that look on camera? It looks so real. That's why I didn't tell you. I wanted to look real. God, I was actually worried you were going to smack me. And so you would have a level of courage, which is what you would have done. Whichever one of those two set this, whatever that was, up, wasn't sure that the other one wasn't going to whip his ass, which is why you come and tell him ahead of time. Same as the maitre d', stopping the routine when Austin starts to puff up. And I don't know why they did it. It was a very peculiar thing. And my memory is only so good. Well, you know what? My memory. Photographic. It really is. It truly is. But I know there's been call-outs with Masvidal and Jake Paul. I know like that's been a thing over time. But for those with a short-term memory, for those with a little longer-term memory, they used to even train together. These guys are friends. They get along great. Jake was preparing for his fights in Florida. Jorge Masvidal was coming in and helping him. They were buddies. And George knew about stroke. He knew, hey, this guy's got a little shine. This is going to be reciprocal. We're going to put a little time in here, even if he's an amateur and I'm a pro, but it's going to pay back because he's got an audience. It was great. There was no problem with it, but there was no beef. There was no falling out. So now you got two guys that have been associated all the way to the practice room where they got along, and now they're in this thing. They're in this thing that's planned, and I just don't know why. I don't know. My partner Ryan is convinced Jorge Masvidal is not done. Subsequent of this staged face-off, he's convinced that George isn't done. Now, I don't ever disagree with Ryan in that George still has it, that George is still young, and that George could be talked into something. But I don't know where he's going to do or who he's going to do it with. Is he looking to just box? Okay, great, but with who? Like that's a myth that if you go and box, you'll make a bunch of money. That is a myth. So, is he going to come back and do MMA? No. For sure, the answer to that is no. Because he's under contract with the UFC, and he would have to do it at the UFC. By example, he's out of the USADA pool. He is not returning. Nobody can match that price. Nobody's going to give the buyout to Dana to get, like, this is not going to happen. In my opinion. Right, I get things wrong. So is that what they're doing? Are they starting to hype something? Are they getting a little nervous on Nate? I see, that's the point that I'm trying to make to you guys. I'm trying to turn your minds on and get you to speculate. They did this for a reason. And when they had it, they're good enough to sit back and look and go, that's not that good. But it is 2 stars. It is something interesting. It is a parking lot in Miami. Let's put it out. And if they were just looking to have a little fun, maybe. It kind of looks like an expensive shoot. I mean, not for nothing. If I was going to do something like that, I would probably use an iPhone. They had multiple cameras. There was an editing process. There was micro. I mean, there was a lot that went into it. So what's it for? Right? And then this is in conjunction with hearing that Nate Diaz isn't happy with the Texas Commission due to the regulation or refusal thereof as it pertained to marijuana use. Right on the heels of hearing about that and then hearing speculation that Nate is asking to fight somewhere else, which, by the way, I don't believe is true. I mean, Nate might be asking it, but Nate will follow whatever rules they have. But I'm just sharing with you, and then all of a sudden, you get a guy who's available, who's free, who's good with the hands, who you know and you're familiar with, just like Rahman Jr. You've been in the ring and you sparred with him. And all of a sudden, he's popping up. He's going face to face. And I ask you, what for? There was one a while back. It was Andrew Tate and it was Jake Paul, and they faced off, but then they like laughed and hugged. And they advertised something else. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I remember it, so it must have been good. But then you had the face-off with Floyd and his crew of dirtbags versus Paul Runs. And didn't know how to handle that from a PR perspective, so he said it was a work. He said that they set it up, right? That was clever. I was impressed by that. Most of you ate that up. But I could still explain why we did it. I could explain why he pretended that was right. I could do the whole thing. Why were Jake and George Masvidal face to face in a parking lot talking trash? Why were they doing that? Scripted or not? What was that about? If it was about fun, fine. That's expensive fun. If it was about business, what business are those two planning together?